The massive ship appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's deep space scanners showed nothing but stars and silence. The next, a vessel larger than anything humans had ever built hung in orbit above the blue planet. Its surface was smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. In the control room of International Space Station Alpha, Dr. Alan Pierce looked up from his console with wide eyes. The station's alarms had gone silent after the initial alert, as if they too were shocked by what had appeared. "Are we recording this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa Martinez, the communications specialist on duty, nodded. Her fingers moved quickly across her station. "All instruments running. I'm sending the feed to Earth now." She paused, listening to her earpiece. "Mission control confirms visual. They're telling everyone to stay calm." The alien ship remained motionless for 23 hours. Earth's government scrambled, military forces went on high alert, and civilians alternated between panic and fascination. Finally, a message arrived on all frequencies, in perfect English. "We are the Sci-Fi Federation. We come to establish diplomatic relations." 3 days later, the first meeting between species took place on the space station. The aliens chose this neutral ground as a gesture of peace. Dr. Pierce led the small welcome team, with Lisa handling translation duties, though the aliens seemed to have mastered human languages with remarkable speed. The Sci-Fi looked almost like tall humans, except for their bluish skin and extra joint in their arms. Their leader, who called himself Commander Zixfile, spoke with the smooth confidence of someone used to power. "Your technological progress is impressive for such a young species," he said, examining the station with four-fingered hands. "Though we find your emotional attachments curious." Dr. Pierce smiled politely. "Emotions are central to human experience, Commander. They drive our art, our science, even our diplomacy." The alien made a gesture that might have been dismissal. Most developing species outgrow such primitive systems as they advance. The meeting continued with exchanges of basic cultural information. The Sci-Fi spoke of their Federation of 12 Worlds, their advanced propulsion systems, and their interest in Earth's unique biosphere. They revealed nothing of their weapons or true capabilities. On the 5th day of diplomatic talks, alarms blared throughout the station. A pressure seal had failed in one of the connecting modules. Automatic systems engaged, but something in the alien technology was interfering with the station's computers. "We need to evacuate this section," Lisa shouted over the noise. She grabbed data storage units containing the records of their meetings. The aliens moved with surprising speed toward their shuttle. In the chaos, Dr. Pierce ran forward, trying to help a technician trapped behind a partially closed door. Lisa followed, carrying the precious data. "The system is failing," Commander Zixfile announced. "We must depart immediately." The station rocked with a small explosion from an electrical fire. Dr. Pierce and Lisa, having freed the technician, turned to see the alien delegation boarding their shuttle. The blast had separated them from the rest of the human team. "Wait," Lisa called, rushing forward with Pierce. "We need tow." The door to the alien shuttle closed just as they reached it. Inside, junior officers looked to Commander Zixfile for instructions. "These humans entered our vessel during an emergency," the commander noted coolly. "Protocol would dictate returning them. But we cannot risk another docking with that station in its current condition." His second-in-command, an officer named Yex Moore, tilted her head. "2 individuals are an acceptable loss by their own protocols. Their mission parameters allow for casualties." The commander nodded. "We will proceed to the next destination. Perhaps we can return them at a later time." The Sci-Fi shuttle detached from the failing station, leaving behind the human emergency teams rushing to contain the damage. As the alien vessel accelerated away from Earth orbit, Dr. Pierce and Lisa found themselves watching their home planet shrink in a viewing screen. Unexpected passengers on an alien ship bound for deep space. No one had told them that in Sci-Fi culture, the needs of individuals never outweighed operational efficiency. No rescue would be coming from the aliens. But they didn't know that on Earth, things worked very differently. Captain Samantha Kelly stood with her arms crossed, watching the emergency recording for the 5th time. The space station's cameras had captured everything. The system failure, the chaos, and most importantly, the moment when Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez were taken aboard the alien shuttle before it departed from Earth orbit. "Play it again," she ordered, leaning closer to the screen in the command center of the Earth Space Corps vessel, Northern Star. Lieutenant Jack Foster sighed but did as she asked. "Captain, we've been ordered to maintain our position. Earth government wants to resolve this through diplomatic channels." Samantha turned to face her second-in-command, her expression hard. "It's been 3 days, Jack. The Sulfuri ambassador claims they're following standard protocol for their culture. That 2 people aren't worth turning their ship around for. And our orders? Our orders are to do nothing." She walked to the large window that showed Earth below them, beautiful and blue. "When have we ever left people behind?" Jack waited, knowing his captain well enough to see she had already made a decision. "Gather the crew," Samantha said finally. "I won't order anyone to follow me on this, but I'm going after them." An hour later, the crew of the Northern Star assembled in the main bay, 30 men and women in uniform, waiting as their captain stood before them. "I've received orders not to pursue the Sulfuri vessel," Samantha began, her voice clear and strong. "The diplomats are afraid of starting a war with an advanced alien civilization. I'm going anyway, and I'll face the consequences when we return. But I won't order any of you to risk your careers. Anyone who wants to stay behind will be transferred to the station with full honors. No questions asked." Silence filled the room. Then Engineer Tim Rodriguez stepped forward. "With all due respect, Captain, I've got the engines running at 110% already. Seems a waste to power them down now." Next to him, Navigator Olivia Wright nodded. "I've plotted the most likely course the alien ship would take based on their trajectory. We can catch them if we push hard." From the back, Medical Officer Dr. Chris Daniels raised his hand. "I've prepped the medical bay for possible alien physiology, just in case we need to negotiate forcefully." One by one, every crew member indicated they would stay. Jack Foster smiled slightly as he turned to his captain. "Looks like you've got a full crew, ma'am." Samantha felt a tightness in her throat, but kept her face professional. "Prepare for departure. We launch in 30 minutes. As the crew dispersed to their stations, Samantha received a call from Earth Command. Admiral Greg Hartman's face appeared on her screen, stern and official. "Captain Kelly, our sensors show you're powering up for departure. You have no clearance to leave orbit. With respect, sir, we have 2 people on that alien ship." The Admiral's expression softened slightly. "Sam, I understand how you feel. But this is bigger than 2 people. The Sulfuri Federation has technology far beyond ours. We can't risk angering them. So we just abandon our own. Is that the message we want to send to the first advanced aliens we meet?" "Those are your orders, Captain. Stand down." Samantha straightened her shoulders. "Then you'll have to place me under arrest when I return, sir." Northern Star out. She cut the connection before he could respond. On the bridge, the crew worked with focused energy. No one spoke about the fact they were all risking court-martial. Jack handed Samantha a data pad with their projected course. "If the alien ship maintains its current speed, we can intercept in 6 days," he said. "Push the engines harder. Make it 4. As the Northern Star broke Earth orbit, following the path of the Sulfuri vessel, a message arrived from a private mining vessel near Mars. "Captain Kelly, this is the lunar miner. We heard about your mission. We're changing course to provide support if needed." Then another message came, from a research ship, then a colonial transport, then a dozen more. Samantha looked at Jack in surprise. How did they know? He smiled. "Word travels fast when humans are in trouble, especially when other humans are trying to help them." The Northern Star accelerated into the darkness, no longer alone in its mission. Behind them, Earth continued its diplomatic protests, but ahead of them, more and more ships altered their courses, ready to show the aliens exactly what humans would do for their own. News traveled faster than light through the human colonies, from Earth to Mars, from the mining stations of the asteroid belt to the research outposts orbiting Jupiter. The story spread. 2 humans taken by aliens, 1 ship in pursuit, and Earth government doing nothing. On the small colony of Europa, Frank Watson watched the unofficial news broadcast on his tablet. As head of a small mining operation, he had access to a fast transport ship. "Mary," he called to his operations manager, "how quickly can we reroute the digger?" Mary looked up from her station. "The digger? It's loaded with ore for Earth. Why would we reroute it?" Frank showed her the broadcast. "Because our people need help." Within hours, the digger changed course. It told still full of valuable minerals, but now headed toward the path of the Sci-Fi ship. Similar scenes played out across human space. Retired military pilot Susan Ortiz reactivated her old scout ship. The colony transport Dakota diverted from its regular route. 15 independent traders formed a loose convoy. A science vessel studying Saturn's rings abandoned its mission to join the growing fleet. None of these ships were as fast as the Northern Star, but they positioned themselves along possible escape routes, creating a net in space. They sent messages to each other, coordinating without any central command. Aboard the Sci-Fi vessel, Commander Zixval received a troubling report from the ship's sensor officer. "Multiple human vessels are changing course, Commander," the officer said. "They appear to be moving to intercept us." Zixval studied the display showing dozens of small ships altering their trajectories. "Are they armed?" "Some have basic weapons, but nothing that threatens our shields." "The strange thing is," the officer hesitated, "they're not military vessels. They're mining ships, science vessels, civilian transports, all moving in patterns that suggest coordination." The intelligence officer, Yex Moore, joined them at the display. Her species rarely showed emotion, but she seemed puzzled. "This is unusual behavior," she noted. "Each ship appears to be acting independently, yet their movements form a cohesive strategy. We've never observed this response pattern in first contact scenarios." Commander Zixval turned to a junior officer. "Bring the human specimens to the command deck." When Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez arrived, they looked tired but unharmed. The aliens had treated them well, providing food and quarters, but had mostly ignored them. "Your people are behaving strangely," Zixval said without greeting. "Explain why civilian vessels are mobilizing to intercept us." Lisa glanced at the display and felt a surge of hope. "They're coming for us." "Impossible. Your government has already accepted our explanation. 2 individuals are not worth risking interstellar relations." Dr. Pierce stepped closer to the display. "Our government doesn't speak for all humans, and humans don't abandon their own." Yex Moore tilted her head. "This defies logic. These ships are sacrificing profitable missions and endangering themselves for 2 unknown individuals. There must be some other motive." "The motive is simple," Lisa said. "It's what humans do. If someone is lost, we find them. If someone is trapped, we free them. Every one of those ship captains knows that if they were taken, others would come for them too." Commander Zixval studied the humans with new interest. "Your species values individuals to this degree, even at cost to collective efficiency." "Especially then," Dr. Pierce answered. "Our history is full of stories where many risked everything to save a few." The Sci-Fi officers exchanged glances that suggested this concept was entirely foreign to them. On the Northern Star, Captain Kelly received another update. The message counter on her screen showed 67 human vessels now involved in the search. "They're still accelerating," Jack reported. "But with all these ships coordinating, they'll have no clear path to leave our system." Samantha nodded. "Send our position to the network. And prepare a message for the Sci-Fi ship when we get in range." "What should it say?" She looked at the star map, showing the positions of dozens of human ships, forming a net that tightened around the alien vessel. "Keep it simple," she said. "Tell them, return our people. We won't leave without them." Dr. Pierce sat on the edge of his bed in the small room the Sulfuri had provided. It wasn't a prison cell, but it wasn't freedom either. The aliens called it a guest quarter, though guests usually could leave whenever they wanted. The door slid open, and Lisa Martinez entered. She carried a tablet-like device the aliens had given her to study their language. "Any luck with the translation program?" Ellen asked. Lisa nodded. "I'm getting better at understanding them. The junior officer, Krelthar, has been helping me. He seems curious about humans." Ellen moved to make room for her to sit. "What have you learned about them?" "Their society is very different from ours," Lisa said. "Everything is based on utility and efficiency. Their families are organized around specialized work functions. Children are raised by educational groups based on their aptitudes. That explains why they didn't understand why humans would come for us." Lisa nodded. "In their culture, rescue operations are only launched if the cost-benefit analysis makes sense. They might save a ship carrying important officials or a large group, but never just one or two people." The door opened again, and a tall Xalthori entered. Unlike most of the aliens they had seen, this one's uniform had minimal markings. He was Krelthar, the junior officer assigned to monitor them. "You speak of rescue," he said in careful English. "Your people pursue this ship for only 2 lives. This is very wasteful of resources." Helen stood up. "It's not waste to us, Krelthar. Every human life has value." The alien made a gesture they had learned meant confusion. "All life has value, but value must be measured against cost. If 10 must die to save 2, the math is simple." "For humans, it's not about math," Lisa explained. "It's about principle. We don't measure a life's worth in numbers." Krelthar moved to a viewing screen on the wall and activated it. It showed stars streaking by as the ship moved at high speed. "Your captain, the female called Kelly, continues to pursue us despite warnings. Many of your vessels change course to join her. Your government sends messages disavowing her actions. She's doing what any of us would do," Alan said. "No one gets left behind." Krelthar was silent for a moment. "In my studies of Earth transmissions, I found your entertainment programs. Many show humans risking lives for others. I thought these were fiction, exaggerations." "They're based on real human behavior," Lisa said. "Throughout our history, we've celebrated those who risk everything to save others." The alien tiled his head. "This is why your species advanced so slowly compared to ours. You waste resources on individuals." Alan smiled slightly. "Or maybe it's why we survived it all. Humans evolved in groups that protected each other. We learned that our strength was in our connections, not just our individual abilities." Krelthar considered this. "Commander Zixval has ordered me to learn more about this human behavior. It is unexpected." On the command deck, Commander Zixval watched the sensor displays with growing concern. The pursuing human vessel, Northern Star, had gained ground. More troubling were the dozens of human ships now positioned along their planned route. "The human vessels are forming a blockade pattern," reported the navigation officer. "They cannot stop us by force, but avoiding them will cost us time." Yex Moore, the intelligence officer, joined the commander. "I have been analyzing their communications. The humans are sharing resources, adjusting positions based on our course changes. Without central command, they achieve coordinated action through shared purpose." Commander Zixval touched the display, zooming in on the Northern Star. "This ship is the key. Its captain drives this pursuit." "What are your orders, Commander?" asked the weapons officer. "We could destroy the pursuing vessel," Zixval said thoughtfully. "Our weapons are superior." Yex Moore shook her head. "Based on observed behavior patterns, destroying one ship would not deter the others. It might instead trigger a more aggressive response from all human vessels." The commander nodded slowly. "An interesting hypothesis. These humans operate on principles we do not fully understand yet. He turned to his communications officer. Prepare a message to the pursuing vessel. Invite their captain to speak with us. In the guest quarters, Krelfar's communication device chimed. He listened, then looked at the two humans with new interest. It seems your Captain Kelly will soon have her chance to explain this human behavior directly to Commander Zixval. He has invited her to board our vessel for discussion. Alan and Lisa exchanged worried glances. They knew Samantha Kelly would accept the invitation without hesitation, walking straight into the heart of an alien ship to bring them home. Captain Samantha Kelly stood in the shuttle bay of the Northern Star, checking her sidearm one last time before securing it in its holster. She wore her formal uniform, though she doubted the aliens would understand or care about the significance of the gold piping and polished buttons. "I don't like this," Lieutenant Jack Foster said, standing next to her. "It could be a trap." Samantha nodded. "It could be, but it's also the fastest way to get our people back. Let me come with you." She shook her head. "No, if something goes wrong, the crew needs you here." She handed him a data pad. "If I'm not back in 3 hours, you contact the other ships and proceed with Plan B." Jack took the pad reluctantly. The fleet has grown to over 100 vessels now. The mining consortium ships arrived an hour ago. "Good." Samantha smiled slightly. "Make sure the Xalfori can see them all on their sensors." The small shuttle launched from the Northern Star, crossing the short distance to the much larger alien vessel. As Samantha's craft approached, a bay opened like a mouth in the smooth hull. Inside, she was met by 2 Xalfori officers who escorted her through curved corridors, lit with a soft blue light. They did not speak, and Samantha focused on memorizing the path they took. Finally, they arrived at a large room with a view of space through a wide window. Commander Zixval waited there, along with several other aliens. "Captain Kelly," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "Your pursuit of this vessel is most irregular." Samantha kept her expression neutral. "You have 2 of our people on board. We've come to take them home." The commander gestured to a display showing the positions of human ships. "Your government has accepted our explanation. This pursuit is unauthorized." "I'm not here as a representative of Earth government," Samantha replied. "I'm here as a human being who doesn't leave her people behind." Zixval studied her for a moment. "You risk your career, possibly your life, for 2 individuals you do not know personally. I would do the same for any human." A female alien stepped forward. Samantha recognized her as Yex Moore, the intelligence officer, from briefings. "Captain, in our culture, efficiency is valued above all," Yex Moore explained. "Risking many for few is considered primitive and irrational. Where I come from, leaving people behind is what's considered primitive," Samantha countered. Commander Zixval made a gesture, and a door opened. Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez entered, escorted by a junior officer. Their faces lit up when they saw Captain Kelly. "Are you both okay?" Samantha asked them. Lisa nodded. "We're fine, Captain." Samantha turned back to Zixval. "There they are, safe and sound. Now let us take them home." "Your determination is interesting," the commander said, "but I wonder if you understand the position you are in. Our vessel outguns yours by several orders of magnitude." "I'm well aware of that," Samantha said calmly. "But have you looked at your sensor readings lately? You're not just dealing with the Northern Star anymore." At a nod from the commander, the display changed to show a wider view. Dozens of human ships were now visible, positioned in a loose formation that would make it difficult for the Xalfori vessel to proceed on its planned course. "None of these ships could harm us individually," Zixval noted. "True, but together they represent something you should understand." Samantha stepped closer to the display. "Every one of those ships changed course and abandoned their mission to help us. Not because of orders, but because that's what humans do." "You waste resources," Yex Moore said, though her tone suggested fascination rather than criticism. Samantha shook her head. "We invest in each other, and that investment pays off." Because every human out there knows that if they were in trouble, others would come for them too. That's not waste. That's strength. Commander Zix Val exchanged glances with his officers. They seemed to communicate silently, in a way Samantha couldn't interpret. This behavior is unknown in our history, the commander finally said. When Xalfori is lost, we mourn and move forward. We do not risk the collective for the individual. Maybe that's why we're different, Samantha suggested. And maybe different isn't bad. Now, will you release my people, or do we need to continue this demonstration of human persistence? Zixval was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Dr. Pierce and Lisa. You will be returned to your vessel as a gesture of cultural exchange. We wish to understand this human trait further. Samantha felt relief flood through her but kept her expression professional. A wise decision, Commander. I think we all have a lot to learn from each other. Commander Zix Val stood on the observation deck of his vessel, watching as Captain Kelly's shuttle returned to the Northern Star. The two humans, Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez, had gone with her. He had kept his word, but he had not ended the encounter. Your decision troubles the crew, Yex Moore said, joining him at the window. Some believe you showed weakness. Not weakness. Curiosity. Zixval turned to his intelligence officer. We have encountered 17 spacefaring species in our history. None have displayed this behavior pattern. The ship's sensors chimed with new alerts. Yex Moore checked the readings and her eyes widened slightly. Commander, more human vessels have appeared at the edge of our sensor range. Zixval moved to the main display. The screen showed dozens of new contacts, small ships of various types, all converging toward their position. How many? 236 vessels now detected, with more appearing. Yex Moore adjusted the display. Most are civilian craft. Mining ships, transport vessels, private yachts. Some are military, but operating outside their command protocols. The navigation officer approached. Commander, our planned route to the Neutron Star research site is now completely blocked by human vessels. They have positioned themselves in a loose formation that would require us to alter course by at least 40 degrees to avoid contact. They cannot stop us by force, Zixval noted. No, sir, but they can make our passage inconvenient. Aboard the Northern Star, celebration filled the ship. The crew welcomed Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez with cheers and embraces. In her private quarters, Captain Kelly received a transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Hartman's face appeared on the screen, his expression a careful mix of disapproval and relief. Captain Kelly, I've received word that Dr. Pierce and Communications Specialist Martinez are safely aboard your vessel. Yes, sir. They're both in good health. The Admiral sighed. You disobeyed direct orders, Captain. I did, sir. And in doing so, you triggered the largest unauthorized mobilization of civilian and military assets in human history. He paused. Over 300 ships have altered course to support your mission. The mining corporations are demanding compensation for lost time. 3 colony supply runs are behind schedule. Samantha remained silent, waiting for the formal reprimand she knew was coming. Instead, the Admiral shook his head. The President wants to speak with you when you return. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that while I cannot officially condone your actions, he lowered his voice. Unofficially, well done. The transmission ended, leaving Samantha surprised but grateful. She made her way to the bridge where Jack Foster greeted her with a datapad. We're receiving messages from ships all over the system, he said. Everyone wants to know what happens next. Next, we go home, Samantha replied. Mission accomplished. Jack gestured to the main display. The Xalfori vessel hasn't moved. And look at this. The screen showed the alien ship surrounded by a cloud of human vessels, maintaining a respectful distance, but clearly present in force. They're waiting to see what the aliens will do, Jack explained. No one wants to leave until they're sure the Xalfori understand the message. On the Xalfori vessel, Commander Zixval called an emergency meeting of his senior officers. The human ships remain in position despite the return of their people, he told the gathered aliens. Their behavior defies standard response patterns. The weapons officer spoke up. Should we disperse them by force? A demonstration of our superior technology would. No, Zixval interrupted. That would be a fundamental misunderstanding of what we are witnessing. He activated a holographic display showing the positions of all human vessels. Look at this pattern. No central command. No formal organization. Yet they function as a unified force. Yexmore stepped forward. I have analyzed their communications. They share information freely, adjust positions based on suggestions rather than orders. It is elegant in its simplicity. A high command must be informed, said the communications officer. This changes our assessment of human capabilities. Commander Zixval nodded slowly. Indeed, we believe humans were technologically advanced, but culturally primitive due to their emotional attachments. He studied the display showing hundreds of ships that had abandoned their missions to save 2 individuals. We were wrong. He turned to his navigation officer. Set course for the neutron star. Proceed slowly and transmit our intentions clearly to all human vessels. We will show respect for their formation. 2 days passed as the Salfori vessel continued toward the neutron star they had planned to study. The massive fleet of human ships had thinned somewhat, with many returning to their original missions now that Dr. Pierce and Lisa were safe. But dozens remained, following at a respectful distance like an honor guard. Commander Zixval received a surprising message from the Northern Star. Captain Kelly requested another meeting, this time bringing information to share with the aliens. After brief consideration, he agreed. When Samantha arrived on the Salfori ship, she came prepared. She carried a data device containing selected information from human history. Thank you for seeing me again, Commander, she said as she entered the meeting room. Dr. Pierce had accompanied her this time, acting as scientific advisor. Your request was unexpected, Zixval replied. I believed our interaction was concluded with the return of your people. Samantha placed her data device on the table between them. I realized that we left something important unfinished. Understanding. Yexmore, who had joined them, tilted her head. Understanding of what, Captain? Why we do what we do. Samantha activated the device, which projected images into the air between them. You called our behavior primitive, based on emotional attachment that advanced species should outgrow. I want to show you why you're wrong. The first image showed an old black and white photograph of men in small boats on a stormy sea. This is from our history, Dr. Pierce explained. The year 1943. A ship sank during a storm. Every available boat in the nearby town launched to search for survivors, despite the danger. Ordinary people risked death to save strangers. The images change, showing more scenes from human history. Firefighters entering burning buildings, rescue workers digging through earthquake rubble, medical teams in war zones. Throughout our history, Samantha continued, humans have organized themselves around a simple principle: no one gets left behind. Commander Zixval studied the images with growing interest. These are not military personnel. They have no duty to act this way. That's the point, Dr. Pierce said. This behavior isn't enforced by rules or laws. It's who we are. The display changed to show a diagram of early human evolution. We evolved as social creatures, Dr. Pierce explained. Our ancestors weren't the strongest or fastest animals. They survived because they protected each other. A human who would risk everything to save another wasn't being irrational. They were ensuring the survival of the group. Yexmore moved closer to the display. An evolutionary adaptation. Yes, Samantha said, but one your people seem to have evolved beyond. The commander made a gesture that the humans had learned indicated thoughtfulness. In our history, we prized individual achievement until we reached a certain technological level. Then we recognized that rational calculation and efficiency would advance our civilization faster. And you lost something in the process, Samantha suggested. Zixval did not deny it. Perhaps. But your way has costs too. The resources diverted to save your two people could have been used elsewhere. Samantha nodded. True, but consider this. She changed the display to show the fleet of human ships that had gathered. Look what we accomplished with no central command, no official orders. Hundreds of ships, thousands of people, all acting together for a common purpose. Impressive coordination, Yex Moore admitted. Not coordination, Dr. Pierce corrected. Cooperation, born from the knowledge that any one of those ships would receive the same response if they were in trouble. Commander Zixval walked slowly around the display, studying it from all angles. A different form of efficiency, not in resource allocation, but in collective action through shared values. Exactly, Samantha said. When I came aboard your ship the first time, you thought you were dealing with one rogue captain and a single ship. You weren't. You were facing the entire human race. The commander looked at her with new respect. And we would have faced the same response had we taken any humans. Any. From the most important leader to the simplest worker. Samantha turned off the display. That's not weakness, Commander. That's our strength. Zixval was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Yex Moore. Inform the High Command that we have encountered a species with an unusual defensive adaptation. Humans protect their individual units as if each were essential to the whole. Samantha smiled slightly. That's because they are. As she prepared to return to her ship, Commander Zixval made an unexpected request. Captain Kelly, I would like to send a delegation of our scientists to accompany you back to Earth. If your government permits, we wish to study this human trait further. The return journey to Earth took 11 days. The Northern Star led the way, with its Salthori vessel following at a respectful distance. Most of the human fleet had dispersed, returning to their original missions, but a few ships remained as escorts. Aboard the alien vessel, Commander Zixval called an emergency council meeting with his senior officers. The large meeting chamber hummed with quiet conversation as the aliens discussed what they had witnessed. The strategic implications are significant, said the weapons officer. A species that mobilizes its entire population to protect individuals represents an unusual defense posture. Yex Moore displayed her analysis on the main screen. I have compiled all data on human behavior during this encounter. Their response defies conventional military logic, but demonstrates remarkable effectiveness. Commander Zixval rose to address the gathering. We have always judged species by their technology, their resource management, their military capabilities. By those measures, humans are less advanced than we are. He paused. But we have failed to account for another form of advancement. He activated a recording showing the hundreds of human ships that had gathered in space. No central command coordinated this. No authority ordered these ships to abandon their missions. Yet they formed a more effective blockade than many organized military operations we have encountered. A science officer spoke up. Commander, if all humans share this trait, this willingness to sacrifice for individuals, what would happen if we were to take hostile action against their planet? Total resistance, Zixval answered without hesitation, not just from their military, but from every human with the capability to act. Their history shows this pattern repeatedly. The council chamber grew quiet as the implications became clear. The Salthori had encountered many species in their expansion through space. Some they had dominated through technology. Others they had manipulated through division of their leadership. But humans would be different. My recommendation to the High Command, Zixval continued, is to classify humans not as a developing civilization, but as an emergent power of unique resilience. We should seek alliance rather than dominance. On Earth, the return of the Northern Star created a media sensation. The ship landed at the main spaceport with Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez, walking proudly alongside Captain Kelly and her crew. Government officials waited to greet them, along with news cameras and cheering crowds. The President herself stepped forward to shake Samantha's hand. Captain Kelly, your actions were unauthorized and against direct orders, she said, loudly enough for the cameras to hear. Then she lowered her voice. And the finest example of humanity, I've seen in my lifetime. Formally, Captain Kelly and her crew received official reprimands for disobeying orders. The documents were placed in their personnel files with great ceremony. Unofficially, they received commendations and were celebrated as heroes. 1 week later, a delegation of 7 Sci-Fi scientists arrived on Earth to begin what would become known as the Human Understanding Project. Led by a now-promoted Officer Krell, they established a research facility dedicated to studying human cooperation, sacrifice, and social bonds. Dr. Pierce and Lisa Martinez became the primary liaisons for this project. Their experience aboard the alien vessel made them uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between species. What fascinates us most, Krell explained to Dr. Pierce as they set up their new laboratory, is how humans maintain individuality while acting collectively. In our society, one must be sacrificed. In ours, Alan replied, we're strongest when we stand together to ensure no one is sacrificed. On the final day before Commander Zixval's vessel departed Earth orbit to return to the Sci-Fi Federation, he invited Captain Kelly for one last meeting. They stood on the observation deck, looking down at the blue-green planet below. Your world is beautiful, the commander said, but not as beautiful as what we discovered about your people. Samantha looked at him curiously. And what was that? That true advancement isn't measured by technology alone, but by how a civilization treats its most vulnerable members. A young Sci-Fi cadet approached them, waiting respectfully until acknowledged. Commander, the cadet said, I do not understand why the humans' behavior matters so much. Why have we changed our entire approach based on how they treat 2 lost individuals? Zixval looked from the cadet to Captain Kelly, then back to the young alien. Because we learned that their greatest strength isn't in their weapons or their technology, he explained. It's that humans never abandon their own, and that makes them both the most predictable and most